Well, after falling flat on its face, News24, affectionately known as Propaganda 24 by many South Africans, after falling flat on its face with a fake news story, which it ran prematurely on Monday this week, and then on Tuesday, Heritage Day, needing to apologize. Well, it was a lame apology. It wasn't sincere, but to print a retraction over a fake news story about Jan Braai, in which they accused him of being a racist using an edited or incomplete video, I should say. News24 got egg on its face, and it had to admit that it reported fake news, which got a lot of racist and race hustlers and bigots all excited and hot under the collar for non-existent crimes with their little microaggressions, to use their terminology. Well, here we are having today, Wednesday, the 25th of September 2024, News24 desperate to keep the race hustling narrative going, running a non-story about Roman Cabanac. Steenhuisen starts dismissal process after his chief of staff, Roman Cabanac, refuses to step down. Okay, but there's nothing in the story that actually addresses that, about John Steenhuisen starting a dismissal process. That's a clickbait fake news headline. And once again, Karen Mullen's name is attached to this. This isn't news. This is clickbait in search of a story, trying to suss out and get people to admit to something they have no evidence of. Supposition in search of a news story is what we have here, or yellow journalism. In response to questions from News24 on Tuesday, Heritage Day, so they're bothering the guy on Heritage Day? It was a holiday, a public holiday. Did you miss that part, News24? Roman Cabanac denied media reports that he was seeking a golden handshake after Steenhuisen asked him to step down just weeks after he started his new position. These reports are BS on stilts and were driven by leaks from within the Department of Agriculture, he said. Well, I don't know if they're driven from the Department of Agriculture. I think that Propaganda 24 and other news outlets are actually listening to analysts like myself who've been pointing out from the very beginning that you never resigned, that you would have to be terminated. And if you are terminated, they would have to pay you. That's South African law for terminating the contract without just cause. You have a case to go after them for the money. Well, I pointed that out the very first time I covered the story. Well, News24 is not bright enough to realize that. Now, after probably watching tweets and going through YouTube videos, they finally dawned on them that, hey, this guy could get some money. So now they're making up a story with nothing in the story. They have no evidence that you're seeking a golden parachute, golden handshake. That's nonsense. That's their supposition. Now, this is what Roman said. The same department has not met or communicated with me at all in the past 3 weeks. It appears they're spending their time leaking stories and actually starting the HR process. I don't know if that's the case, if they're doing it, Roman. I suspect that News24 is trying to create a story where no story exists. Roman continued saying, I'm obliged to receive a fair and transparent process as part of our law. That's what HR is meant to be doing, not leaking to the press. Again, I don't know if they're leaking to the press. Maybe they are. Or maybe, as we suspect, News24's so-called eminent journalists are trolling Twitter and YouTube to get their news from independent journalists. And if they're not, then they're not very bright there either, because it's been on record for, a month now, over a month since this story broke. And I said that they can't simply expect him to resign. He shouldn't resign. He should stay and get a payout if they're going to fire him, because they have no cause to fire him. Well, there you go. News24 desperate to keep the racism and bigotry stories running in the press by generating a story with no facts. They cite no sources. They don't even mention an anonymous source. No, this is just made up story. Yeah, nothing to it. Vaporware. But it's above the fold. It's the second story on the News24 website this morning. Why? Because for whatever reason, it's in their interest to mislead South Africans into believing that Roman Cabanac is evil, and to mislead South Africans into believing that South Africa has an existential crisis when it comes to race relations. The only existential crisis when it comes to race relations is in the minds and the pens and the publishing of legacy media in South Africa and certain political parties that are all about race hustling, not South Africans. Desperate for attention, News24 running a story after getting egg on their face over the fake news with the Jan Braai story. What do you say, folks? Shame on them.